Hey everybody, this is Avish Parashar from MotivationalSmartass.com. What I want to talk about today with this video is this process of how people get better at things and why, in fact, you may need to get worse before you get better. So to demonstrate this, I want to start with a graph, and to show you this graph, I'm going to once again use my very high-tech electronic whiteboard that I call a big pad of paper. So take a look at this pad. Now, if I create a graph on here of ability versus time. So this is ability, and this is time. Most of us, when we don't think about it much, like to believe that this is a linear progression. What that means is we start here, and we progress pretty linearly up. We get gradually better over time. Now, if you really think about it, you know this is not true at all as far as how we improve. Some people think it's more logarithmic, I think that's the word, where you put in a lot of time and don't see much improvement, and then all of a sudden you get very good very fast. And then some people believe the opposite, where when you start something new, you get really good right away, but then you pretty much permanently level off. And those all have some merit, but I don't think any of them are entirely correct. The one that I come across that seems to be the most valid is the S-curve model, which is you start out and you don't learn much. And in fact, I'll do this with dotted lines so you can see it differently. You start out like with the logarithmic one, but then you see some quick improvement. But then you plateau off as that reaches what got you there. Then you have to learn something new. You have another breakthrough. And then you see more improvement, and then it levels off, and then more improvement, and then it levels off. So this S-curve, right? Improvement, level, improvement, level. The S-curve one, I think, is the one that's closest to the truth, what's accurate. However, I see it as having a variation on that one. So if I create another graph here, ability versus time again, what I find happens is rather than the S-curve, which goes like this, I find that sometimes you have to dip. You actually will get worse before you get better. So you see this. You'll start out the same way, slow, then you'll get better, then you'll plateau off, just like with the first curve. However, to get past the plateau, sometimes your ability will seemingly drop, and then it'll go up, and then it'll plateau off, and then it'll drop, and then it'll go up again. So you get this. So rather than just plateauing, we like to believe we never lose our skill. I have found in a lot of ways that you get this area where you actually get a little bit worse before you get better. So the question then becomes is, why does this happen? Well, I have an idea that comes from my experience. So I'll move this out of the way. See, what I found from a lot of things I've done, and I'll give you 3 quick examples. One is from the world of improv comedy, which is where my background is. And in improv, I found that when I first got into improv, I just did some stuff naturally and I got really good at it. And that kind of took me to a certain level, and that's about how good I got. Then I started learning more, read some really good books on improv, and started trying new things. And I learned ways to refine my skill, to do things in a slightly different way. The problem was, since I had been doing things the same way for so long, I had to break those old habits. Now, in breaking those habits, I had to stop doing things that used to consistently work with an audience, which means my performance wouldn't get as good a response while I was trying to implement the new stuff. Now, eventually, when the new techniques became natural and automatic, my performance went even higher than it was before. So that's an example of a dip. Sometimes you have to let go of your old knowledge. If you've been doing things a certain way and it always has worked for you, but you've got a plateau, you may have to completely throw some of that old stuff away and learn something new. During that period, you're going to be a little worse. And that's hard for a lot of people to do. We feel like we're stepping backwards when we get worse. But if you're doing it intelligently, with the goal in mind of eventually getting better with a plan, then that's the way to go. Here's another example. Maybe you can't relate to improv comedy, but here's another example you can relate to, is typing. So I never learned how to touch type. I type with these 2 fingers and this finger and sometimes this thumb. And that's it, as opposed to using all 5 fingers. And if you've seen my blogs, you know I write a lot on motivationalsmartass.com and befunnyasaSpeaker.com. I also do guest posts, so I'm writing a lot of stuff. And I'm pretty fast with my 3 or 4 finger method. However, I know that I could be much, much faster if I took the time to learn to touch type. And I can actually touch type. It it makes me so much slower. Right now, I could probably, if I'm in a flow, if the words are coming, I could probably get a good 1,000 words done in about half an hour from typing speed. Now, I realize if you type at 100 words a minute, that's like 10 minutes for you, but I'm not saying how fast the typing is, but I'm saying that's how much I can get done in half an hour, including thought. But if I were to try to touch type right now, force myself to do it, it would be painfully slow. I would probably get maybe 200 words done in half an hour. Maybe 5 to 10 words a minute at that rate. And so it would be so slow that my productivity would plummet. I'm not willing to make that sacrifice. Now, I realize I'm being hypocritical here because this is what I'm teaching you to do. But learn from my bad example in this one case. The learning curve for me is so steep right now that I haven't put the time in. But I know that if and eventually when I do, my speed will go way up, my productivity will go up. It's just a matter of being willing to be worse for a little bit if you're able to, for you get better. And the final area I see this is in martial arts classes all the time. I've taught martial arts, and you'll see people who maybe they pick up some bad habits. They're okay fighters, but they're not so great. And it's because they're unwilling to lose their old habits. They had some technique that worked for them, and so they keep falling back on that. Now, in martial arts, the stakes are higher because you might get hit in the face if you mess up. But that's where that willingness comes. If you're willing to be a little bit worse, suffer the consequences, maybe your performance isn't as good, your productivity dips for a little bit, or you get hit in the face with a glove. It's not full contact MMA, so it's not that bad. You'll eventually get much better. So be willing to do that. If you've hit a plateau, ask yourself, do I need to learn something new? Is the reason I'm stuck on this plateau because I'm not willing to take a few steps backwards in order to take many, many steps forward? Thanks.